Thank you, Father Nolan, Father Kelly, Reverend Fathers, any honored guests, and my dear brothers. When I'm looking over my story of how I got here and where I'm currently going, I can't help but to think of what it means for me to be a man in relation to Christ. And so I was thinking over the past couple weeks of Dr. John Burry's idea of everyone needs a spark, internal motivation of what they wake up to. And I think for the first part of my life, it was the same as most other boys of my spark, my internal motivation was myself. That's why I was waking up. I can look to so many instances, whether it was me getting anxious or super hyped up about a baseball game, basketball, football, whatever, school, girls, whatever. I was mostly focused on just how can everything happening around me, how can everyone else please me? And I don't think it was until I got to high school, maybe late middle school, early high school, where I could notice a difference in myself. And I think that took me from going from my normal Nebraskan conservative family into a public high school where people thought very different from me. And I couldn't help but notice in the first few days of school, I could see people really hurting around me. And I was faced with the dilemma of okay, can I keep coexisting around these people and just me be me, kind of the American way that I was taught by the culture? Or do I notice that there's some deep underlying thing within me that's calling me out towards them? And so very soon I found actually these people who were hurting, they were coming to me as this Catholic middle schooler who is this outsider to this public school community. And at first, when I was being encountered by them, I was super confused. I was all I know are my little Ben Shapiro arguments of how to talk with them, and it turns out the Ben Shapiro arguments don't really work when someone's really hurting in their heart. And so I remember so many times in high school where I would go up to my priests around me, I'd go up to my youth minister, and I'd be like, guys, what do I do? And then they'd say, Ethan, don't think for 1 second that they're looking for anything you have to offer to them. What they're really looking for deep within their heart is the heart of Jesus, and you're being called to be that vessel for them. So I could notice in those early years of high school that my internal motivation started to be, okay, how am I going to impact the lives of other people? It was everyone else who was my spark. But even there, I noticed that as I was going through high school and as I was just giving myself, kind of being almost like a workaholic, lay minister, that's what I felt like, that even then there was something still lacking in me of if I was trying to give out of my own self, my own power, that there would be this limitation to helping the other person, and even helping myself, there'd still be a lack. And so I noticed that going into my senior year especially, of just okay, I have this relationship with the Lord, this pseudo-relationship. Lord, what are you calling me to do? Because if it's this is great, this is kind of good, but there has to be something more. And then, maybe I'm getting into the priest hero talk, but then I encountered this radical priest, Father Patrick Stack, and I could notice in him that, man, that guy knew how to be a man, and I was still growing. And so it's just Jesus, what is that? And then at the same time, the VD at the time found me, and he was like, hey, are you thinking about seminary? And I'm like, I'm a public school kid. But eventually I was like, okay, it came up here, and I see okay, these guys seem to have something. And I didn't know what that was until really deep into my first year. I can talk offline about it, but I ended up feeling a call from the Lord to go to Yosemite National Park in California. And there I just encountered this radical intimacy with Jesus. And so it wasn't in that moment that there was some sort of new ministry that opened up in that moment. But it was wow. I I actually feel the invitation, and it's convenient, the timing. I actually do feel, Ethan, can you drink the cup that I drink from? And that could have been a superimposing thing. Looking back, I don't know how I didn't feel entirely anxious about it, but it was the most intimate thing that I had ever encountered. And so I said, yes, Lord, I'm going to try. Anyone who's talked to me for 5 minutes knows that, I fail at that a lot. But I came back to SJV, went into the summer of Totus Tuus, and everything was completely different. Now, when I was trying to help people, it wasn't me trying to help them, but it was me and Jesus doing that. And even looking back in middle school when I tried to fill myself up, that was a definite shortcoming. But now I look at it and I'm like, wow, Jesus, how are you filling me up? And now looking at it from this point of view, Lord, how could I not want that for the rest of my life? I want my masculinity, hopefully my future priesthood, I want it to be modeled off of Christ crucified. I looked at the internal image I associate with Jesus is Christ the bridegroom, and when I looked up the icon, it was Christ carrying his cross. And I can look at so many times in seminary where the days are so hard here, but it's worth it because there's some sort of intimacy that I otherwise wouldn't experience. The reason I keep coming back up here, and it's hard to keep coming back up here at points, completely honest, it's because I encounter Jesus in a different way up here. He speaks to my heart, he enlivens my heart in a different way than I would have anywhere else. And so again, I fall short at this a lot of realizing this reality. But in some sense, that gives me more hope because it tells me I can't rely off my own strength. I can't rely off my own strength to help other people or even myself. It can only be him. So for the journey that the Lord has brought me out from boyhood to, I guess, manhood now, we're still trying, and just giving me this space, you guys, and just this beautiful intimacy, I say praise be Jesus Christ.